Welcome to this episode of the podcast. This episode is with Anna Wishnowsky. Anna is a gymnastics coach. She's a nutritionist. She's an Olympic weightlifter. She does a lot of really cool things. She's a really awesome take on nutrition and training. Today we talked about her evolution as an adult trainee and how she's really learning to enjoy the gym for different reasons than she used to. This is a great episode. You can find her at Anna Wish Fitness on Instagram. She does a lot of great coaching content, and it's a really great conversation. So check it out. As always, thanks for checking out the Strong Kind podcast. Appreciate you. Have a great day. We're good. So, it should still work. So Anna, tell me yeah, I kind of want to jump in. You have what is your athletic history? Like, what got you into strength and conditioning and fitness?
Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna skip past the childhood stuff because I've covered that a number of times.
That's fine. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like I did some gymnastic stuff when I was a kid and I played a lot of soccer, and that was my youth athletic history. When I was about 17, maybe. Yeah, probably late 16, early 17 age. I started going to the gym for the same reason that anyone at that age at that time went to the gym, which was to get smaller, because women are not allowed to take up space, right? Like you have to be skinny because it's the early 2000s, like that's how it worked. So I just went to the gym and all I did was toning, meaning lifting light weights and not really building that much muscle, and running, because running burns calories. So that was my gym life. And then when I moved to New Zealand, I started running more longer distance. But again, it was never really because I loved running. It was just because I needed to burn shitloads of calories and undereat at the same time. It was golden. Loved it. Best times of my life.
Yeah, I like that you got into it. Yeah, I don't really care about your youth athletics. I kind of care about the existential angst period. That's
Yeah.
kind of when I care about people's fitness journeys starting is tell me about, because that's kind of what mine was, is tell me about your existential angst. Because it was, for me, it was let's just go run my face off because that's all I knew how to do. And I didn't have any guidance in the weight room to actually do it well, right? So and I just seen a lot of Rocky movies or just, it's just just go run, right? Even if you go run, you're gonna get jacked, which and that we can go down that road, but running is a great activity. It does not get you jacked though, right? For most people, right?
No, 100%. But I was the same. You're just running from your demons because you're 20 and you don't have another coping skill,
Yeah.
you're a child. So yeah, I was exactly the same, and I went to the gym because that's what you were supposed to do. And I have good muscle building genetics. I didn't need to lift that heavy to put on some muscle, I achieved toned fairly easily because I was severely underfed. It's just yeah, I'm toned because I'm shredded because I'm kind of anorexic.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so we achieved that really well.
Yeah.
And then I didn't start lifting heavier weights until a couple years later. Actually, this is kind of funny. The first exposure that I had to really lifting heavy as against just toning, girl weights, gross, was I went to the gym with a friend of mine who was a dude, and he just had no idea the difference between men and women starting strength. So my first bench press, we did the bar as a warm up, and then he just put tens on the outside. My first bench ever was 40 kilos. And I nearly died because I'd obviously never lifted anything heavy, and I'm just struggling under this barbell, which is not a tiny bench for a woman on day one, right?
Oh yeah.
It's pretty
No.
substantial.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was, I kind of got thrown in the deep end with this dude who was just yeah, you can lift this. And that was when I started picking up heavy weights. But my brain space at the time was still no better. It was still all physique stuff. I was mad binge purging. My history with disordered eating is adorable and long. It just it went for a long time.
Yeah.
So all of that was kind of happening at the same time. So still just trying to lift my demons away, and
I mean,
didn't
a lot of people are still there. I mean, I'm still there in some manners of speaking. I got my true coach is pinging behind you here, but I'm still there. I think I still a big coping mechanism. And it's this is one of the things that's kind of hard to convey. It's okay to have it as a coping mechanism. It just can't be your only coping mechanism, right? You need to go to therapy. You need to figure out runners. So I'm a physio, I'm a physical therapist. And it always is people who are really into running, it's like, are you running away from something or what are you running to, right? Like that's kind of the paramount rehab question because it's like their workload is they want their workload to be so high and it's like, well, you just let's take a day off of running. Or like and like no, like absolutely not, right? And it's like, okay, so let's navigate this, right? It's pretty easy to see what your problem here is, but how are we going to navigate it, right? So, but tell me about like, okay, so how old are you now?
I'm 29. Oh, I did
29.
really
All right.
think.
So you're still young. You're still I just read a post. It's like the people who are in the 23 to 28-year-old range, like just remember life is not over. I'm like, who is telling these kids that life is over? And like, why are these people thinking this? Right? It's like, geez. Like, I mean, but it
Well,
is kind of the narrative, right? Unfortunately, like if your life isn't perfect after you graduate from university, like you're screwed. Like you're gonna be working at the convenience store and, miserable and single. And like that perpetuates. It's wild. But so tell me about like, yeah, what have you found or like then what was the next iteration of Anna that like, okay, when did things like
when
start
did
to
I
get
grow
better? What's that?
yeah, I did eventually kind of grow out of that. It just took some time. But
Yeah, as these things do.
yeah, I started training with a trainer, I think toward the end of 2018.
Okay.
And that was kind of my first exposure to like, I guess I'd done a little bit of more consistent training, but I wasn't following like a specific program, like I was like, well, it's leg day, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to squat and I'm going to hip thrust. And to some extent that works. Like even if you're not on a structured program, if you're going into the gym and you're doing leg stuff, a couple of times a week, you're going to grow. So like I had a little bit of a base of training. It just wasn't super intelligent the way it was structured. And then when I saw a PT, sorry, I should say a personal trainer because I
That's
am
okay.
going to
Yeah.
um, when I started seeing a personal trainer, he was like, he put me on a program, he kind of sorted me out. And then he was the one who kind of like opened my eyes to what training can actually look like and how you can really change lives with it. So he was the one that kind of inspired me to like go into this outside of my corporate job. I thought it would be a job hobby and then I kind of gave up on the corporate thing. And that's where I actually started training more intelligently. So I don't think that my training history of like good training is any longer than about 5 years.
I'm probably there with you, and I've been training for a really long time. It's kind of sad. It makes me really sad because it's like, man, if and really where I'm at right now is just like, so I get like, I think, do you follow Will Rattel?
Yeah.
Okay, so like, he's like the barbell. It's like barbell, like he's just really strong and like it's just like just go push yourself. And it's like, oh, okay, like but do it intelligently. Like either use some form and actually so Angus is coaching. I hired Angus because I just think he's funny. And it's like, oh, have and Angus is a really smart guy. He won't like take that as a negative that I think I hired him because he thinks he's funny. But like have some structure, but it doesn't have to be perfect and then just go push yourself appropriately. And if you feel like shit, like you can back off a little bit. If you feel good, push a little bit. If you're not eating enough, like navigate that, right? And but for so long, I was like, what's the perfect program, right? Or is this like what's this like it really I just kind of figured out in the last 6 months is like I was still looking for like the secret, even though I knew that there wasn't one, I was still trying to find the secret, right? So you've mentioned good training a couple times. Like, what do you mean by that?
I think that there needs to be a certain amount of structure that is consistent week to week for things to be generally successful. And like I think that's what Will Rattel is getting at. It's like, he's consistent in the sense that he's doing the same general movements and lifts week to week. He's not throwing in, 100 different things. Which I recognize that I'm a CrossFit coach as I'm saying this, but
Yeah.
there's just that need to do some of the same stuff often enough that you're getting a stimulus and not just decaying between those bouts of stimulus. And now to me, I've kind of expanded what I think of as good training. There's a lot more, I don't know, components that I think need to be trained that I wouldn't have considered when I first started doing a more consistent training program. But now I kind of view it as like, yes, I think everyone should do something that is a move fast activity, whether that's throwing or jumping or Olympic lifting, whatever. Like something move fast, real good for you. Doing some move slow, heavy lifting stuff, real good for you. Doing some cardio, yes, don't die soon. Like there's just certain things that I think should be involved in a good training program that are attractive within CrossFit because we do a lot of that stuff, but I just don't always agree with the structure itself or the way that CrossFit executes it sometimes.
Yeah.
Or I should say the average CrossFit gym executes it.
Well, it like I don't I look back at like when I first got into CrossFit and like what the programming was, like it was like, oh, like it now like and I didn't want to do it the way that it was because it was like it was still the go practice handstands for 30 minutes today. Like that was still like one of the three WODs and then you would take a rest day, right?
Yeah.
Or that'd be it was just like 5 by 5, like warm up and then do 5 by 5 like deadlifts or something like that, right? And now what every CrossFit gym is essentially doing is like, hey, do a bunch of shit in an hour. And like it can for the average person, it's still way better than like not doing anything. And you can still make really good benefits, but I think it just leads to a lot of people being like burnt out and broken down in relatively short amounts of time, especially when they're trying to do it 5 or 6 days a week. Like you should probably do that 3 days a week and then go hit the bike for a cardio session and then like go to the track and run, and then do like I follow you for a lot of reasons, but your take on gymnastics is really cool to me. Um, but yeah, I'm with you. Like I think we're on the same page as how implementation is always the big thing, right? But most people just want to sweat. They want to get their heart rate up and sweat, right? Um,
Yeah. I think like this is where you think about CrossFit versus F45 or a Les Mills class or something, and they all converge on the same thing, which is basically people want to feel like they've worked hard, and they don't necessarily equate that with was that a good training stimulus. And it's
yeah.
hard for people who haven't spent years of their life studying and nerding out over this stuff for that to make sense. Like they're just like, well, I feel sweaty and tired, so that's good. That's good training.
Hmm.
And it's tough sometimes to equate the original like CrossFit training philosophy and the way that it was executed with what gyms do now, because it's like, well, strength and metcon isn't like CrossFit, or like it is because that's what we do and it sort of fits within the CrossFit training philosophy, but it isn't in alignment with what HQ was talking about 10 years ago kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it when I say CrossFit, I should probably distinguish between HQ and like on the gym level, but
Yeah.
it's hard, right? Like it gets really messy because people don't know.
Well, it's like I mean, it's hard. So, do you are you close to like Brandon Accardi's gym? Like, do you live close to him or something? Or I think okay, like, because I read his book and I appreciate his take, and it's like this is, like this is GPP, right? And like old school CrossFit was like GPP, and it's not to say that like a lot of the stuff is still not general physical preparation, right? It's just like literally giving people like it's kind of the grind set mentality, right? Like that's such a selling point. And like I do love that stuff. Like I love me some David Goggins, but that guy's a character. He's a psychopath, right?
Yeah.
Like it gets me out of bed in the morning sometimes. And honestly, like just sometimes I really do just like going for a run and like a slow run is probably one of the best things to just like get me like feeling decent. Um and like but doing that 7 days a week or trying to up my mileage all the time is not what I'm about there. It's just literally like just go get your brain chilled out and your body moving, right? Yeah, and I think like you and me, yeah, we've literally gone probably through 15-year arcs of what is this stuff about and what do we care about, and you go deep into the weeds of like physiology and like really good programming, and then you kind of come back. It's the Dunning-Kruger effect where you're like, all right, well,
Yeah.
we just need to go train, right? Like, let's just
Yeah.
go do something,
100%.
right?
Like, were
So
you also the guy that read a million Stronger by Science articles and you get the emails still about stretch mediated hypertrophy and you just think, man, that was a weird time?
I just people get so lost in the sauce, and it's like, so I kind of attract, so a lot of it, I I think pain is something that people don't understand, like the people understand like that's physically happening, but they don't understand like the emotional and cognitive aspects of it. And like a lot of it, I don't know if I should say this, but it's like if you're happy, you don't really care about pain that much. Like when you're like things are going generally good in your life, even if I played rugby in college, and I'm gonna make a post about this, so I wrote about it yesterday. It's like one time I got hit so freaking hard, like so hard. And I was like, I like snapped back. I think I like threw out my shoulder. but I was having fun and it was within the context of the game. And I just got right back up and like kept playing. And then after the game was over, like my shoulder and my upper body were just like wrecked. And it's like when it's like expected and part of the experience, like you can be okay with pain. When it's like
Yeah.
you don't kind of get it and you're also you hate your job and you want more money and you're not having any fun, like that's when pain sucks and that's when it takes hold of people, right? And so it doesn't make it easy to get out of per se, but it at least helps you to like be like, okay, how do I create a recipe to like make my life a little bit better, right? And a lot of that is exercise and attitude and mental health type stuff, right? um but the PT world, the physio world is people trying to biomechanically like solve every problem when a lot of it's like an attention problem, it's a fear problem, it's a load management problem, right? And so yeah, like those articles you're talking about, I like either PT or either Stronger by Science, or then like they do it in the physio world, like it's like, hey, these 3 exercises to improve internal rotation for, hip impingement, and like you just going in the weeds. And then I would do those things and be like, well, this isn't that different from anything else I was doing, right? It's just like lower level or a slightly different move, right? So I
Mhm.
don't know if that resonates with you at all.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think like, you know, it's good to have gone into the weeds because it gives you more context for why being out of the weeds is fine. Where like if you never go into the weeds, you don't have that layer of understanding. And like maybe you never do and you're still a really good coach and you get the high level and it works. But I think probably for both of us having had that deep dive was maybe a good thing to be able to come out of it and look at it all differently.
Who are your big influences right now?
Right now, if I'm like thinking really contemporary, um, honestly, Brandon has been a really big influence. I would say Angus was as well. Like I did the Angus mentorship in 2022, like early 2022, and I started posting content at the end of that year. So it hasn't been that long. I always forget how recent that is. That's actually
You
like
have a pretty damn good following for like only posting. Like you got like 60K followers. Damn. That's good job. Well
I
done.
think I just did what you're doing. I posted every day and I iterated and I got better at it. And
Yeah.
I still get it wrong sometimes, but whatever. We
That's
move
what's gonna happen. I mean,
on.
you're a jacked gymnastic coach. Like you got a lot of good things going for you. Like, and I say that as someone who respects what you're doing. Like, I'm not saying that's easy. I'm saying like if you show up regularly and you keep iterating, you're probably gonna be successful, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I also had the benefit that there are probably relatively few gymnastics-specific creators in the sort of like CrossFit functional fitnessy space. Like people were looking for that, and there's a few now, like my buddy Justin Adams, RX Gymnastics Training, he's really well known at this point. So there's a few people that are making gymnastics content, but like bar him a year ago or 2 years ago, there weren't that many people who were any good. Or there were people like Pamela Gagnon, but she's so focused on like, we'll just be strong and just be tiny. Like then gymnastics will be easy. And that's not necessarily like, that's not easy access for a lot of people. So, and I think she's incredible at what she does in terms of like, she's a very good gymnast, but you're looking her up, hey.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
remember her. I remember that she was like OG. She like yeah, I remember her for sure.
yeah,
Um,
like she's big in, I think she's still partnered with Mayhem or something, and like she's
yeah,
in a lot of CrossFit gymnastics, like demo videos and stuff. She's
yeah,
a she's a big, if not name, then at least face, right? In the
yeah,
in the
yeah,
in
yeah.
the that space.
I
But
I recognize that name, and it's also like, I mean, gymnastics is such an it like because I think you put out something about some simple progressions and stuff, and I talked to Angus about like basically because I really do like to like train every day, right? Um, but you can't like squat, bench, deadlift like every day. Like you could, but like how you would moderate your intensity, it gets really tricky, right? And you also have to suspend your ego, but like working on like a planche or working on like your handstand, like that's stuff that you can, it's challenging and but you could do it like on a regular basis, right? You still have to be smart about it, right? And I think that's some of the stuff that gets lost in like your traditional CrossFit class, right? So anyway, we were going back to your influences. I just wanted to see who this. I wanted to make sure I knew who that was. But like, yeah. So tell me, keep that train of thought going. Sorry to disturb you or sidetrack
Yeah,
you.
well, I started derailing myself anyway, so
That's all
I'll
right.
try to
That's
remember
usually
your
how this works. So
so yeah, Brandon, Angus, David Gray has been excellent. Like, I don't, did you go to any of his seminars?
no,
No.
I probably
Neither.
will in the future. That dude blows my mind. Like, I'm like, I know what you're talking about, but like, what the hell are you talking about? Like sometimes.
I love David. And like, I think the best part about David is that not only does he make great content, explain concepts really well, he's an excellent content creator, he's an excellent businessman, but he's also just like 10 times out of 10, he passes the would I get a beer with him test. He's so lovely. Like he's cool. Kira, his wife, is fucking awesome. Like I just love them. I'm like, I just will ship you forever.
Yeah, that's
He
good.
was he was a big influence in terms of like growing a pair and making content and also having some idea about like how to structure that content. And I still like I don't coach enough people with lower body sort of like I don't know issues like pathologies like that's not my space, but I still use a lot of the principles that I learned from David Gray just in terms of like how I structure my programming, some things that I'll throw in just to be like I consider this good hygiene now in terms of including things in client programs that I picked up from David Gray and prior to that Gary Ward, who I know influenced David a fair bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I David Gray is somebody that I got a couple other CUs that I'm like working through, but like, and I know, but his like the whole upper body basics, lower body basics, like just how he. So I'm like I'm kind of like Occam's razor. Like, let's just keep it simple, and like, and not that that's not what he does, but like a lot of it's like putting people in positions and then like making them hold it and like I'm like, all right, what are we doing here? Because it's just super different than a lot of like I mean it's not that he's not having people move, but it's like finding internal rotation at your hip and like sticking in like the end range and like staying there, right? It's super interesting and it's smart, but it's also like it's just different. It's different than the way a lot of people practice and do things. So yeah. Um,
It's really useful sometimes in a CrossFit gym though, because I would say the thing that David improved a lot for me, well, David and his content, I should say, and particularly Coach's Portal, was just being able to recognize movement habits in people. Like people who are like, oh, that person hasn't visited internal rotation at the hip since 2011. Or, like
yeah.
you start to be able to see those things differently once you've been exposed to it enough times. And it has helped. Like the occasional CrossFit member will come to me and be like, oh, like this is really bothering me. And I'll be like, well, yeah, I've noticed that you move this specific way. Let's try moving the other way and see what happens. And they crumble. So like being able to just not diagnose, not any of that stuff. That's not my job, but being able to be like, let's try this thing and see if it helps. I
You
think
know what's
David has.
funny is that's all I do too. It's just like let's just try this thing, see how it feels. It's like I'm not trying to
Yeah,
diagnose anything, right? But it's just one of those scope and practice issues things. But yeah, you're
totally.
100% right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it is like so much of it is like you seem to hang out in this position. Let's put you in this other position. And if it's like awful in a good way, like that's probably the direction we need to go, right? Yeah. So no, like those are good influences, and that's probably what it's wild because that's what I'm in Iowa. I'm in the middle of the United States, so like I know you're. Are you in New Zealand? Or are you in Australia? You're in Brisbane.
No, I'm in Brisbane in Australia. I was
Gotcha.
in New Zealand for 10 years before that, but I grew up in California and Minnesota.
Did you really?
Yeah, like I know you can't hear my American accent, but everyone here hears a very strong American accent from me.
So I'm like detecting like a little bit that it's not completely Australian, but it definitely like is mostly Australian to me. So
No, like it's really not very Aussie at all. Like I've only been here since September and like my mum is Australian, but I didn't grow up with that much like exposure to an Australian accent. It's
gotcha.
mostly it's like base American with weird notes of Kiwi and like
Yeah.
the
Where
like
were
the
you
occasional
at? Where were you at in
Talking.
California?
NorCal Bay Area. So like I was in a town called Pleasanton, which was just East Bay.
Okay, cool. And then where were you at in Minnesota?
Um, Minnetonka near Minneapolis.
Oh yeah, okay, cool.
You know
I'm
Tonka
in
toys?
I'm in Iowa City, Iowa. So I haven't been to Pleasanton, but I've been around the Bay Area and I've probably been to Minnetonka multiple times. So or the Minneapolis area. So super cool. Funny.
Minnetonka is beautiful. Like, I know there's also that like golden glow of childhood, but like I was there from age 5 to age like 9 almost. I think I turned 9 the day we moved to California or something. And it's just beautiful. It's just one of the most stunning places I think to grow up. It's so cool. Just lakes, snow, sun, like just yeah, it's a
Yeah.
great place.
Minnesota's pretty cool. There's pretty cool stuff. You just got to go find it wherever you're at. You just got to go find it, right? So all right, this is like kind of the segue into like, all right, what are you doing now? Yeah, adult Anna, 29-year-old Anna. What is she? You called yourself mediocre at everything in multiple, or maybe like the jack of all trades in multiple posts, which I very much resonate. Like I'm nowhere near as good as you in multiple aspects of this stuff, but like what are you doing now and why is it fun for you and what's brought you to this point?
I'll answer that from a training lens and then I'll answer it from a coaching lens
Yeah,
just to try to keep myself on track. From
you're
a
good.
training lens, I'm shifting my gymnastics focus from CrossFit stuff, even though I don't have like a perfect level of CrossFit skill, being able to do all the movements to a high enough level, like at some point refining from pretty good to outstanding gets boring. And I also think that you can go from pretty good to outstanding without training the kipping stuff that consistently if you're really strong at other gymnastic stuff. So I kind of got to the point where I was like, I'm just going to lean into calisthenics and maybe more purist gymnastics stuff if I can figure out where to do that. At the moment, I'm struggling to find like a gym in Brisbane where I can do stuff like train on the higher rings and have a spotter. Like I would love to do cool flips and stuff on the rings, but I don't have anywhere to train that right now. So that's a future me problem. So I'm just going to kind of like try to get really good calisthenics basics for the next, I don't know how long, until I get sick of it. And then weightlifting is kind of my top priority for the next, I don't know how many months, but I'm competing not this weekend, next weekend. So I'm like quite I do very general training anyway. Like that's what me and Brandon have kind of worked out for me, but it will increase the amount of like weightlifting focus or something else focus depending on where we're at in a cycle or a season. So it's going to be a little bit of a weightlifting season for the next few months. And then toward the end of the year, I'd like to do some kind of sprint, maybe 100-meter sprint or something like that comp, just for the fuck of it. Like I just want to have a crack. Like I know I'm not that fast, but it's fun to
Sprinting's
have something
fun.
going for.
I
I
I'm
know.
slow. I'm slow, but like sprinting is fun. It's mostly that I when I was little, like I had multiple people be like, because I played soccer, I played football,
Oh
and
yeah.
I could run. I played midfield, and like I could run all day, but like I had multiple coaches be like, Dave, your first step is so slow, and like I like it, and it just ingrained in my brain that like I wasn't gonna be the fast off the ball, so I just was like always moving. And now I'm just realizing like, well, nobody ever taught me how to like accelerate, right? And so the idea that like I can get good at that at 35 years old is kind of fun. Like I still might only ever run like a 13-second 100-meter dash, but like that would still be a win for me, right? So
Oh, good. Yeah.
I'm
And
probably
actually, I would,
I'm gonna lean
sorry,
towards 400. I think I could get good at the 400 because you don't have to be
400.
that fast off the blocks out of 400, right? So
Yeah, 100%. But
what are
like
you gonna say?
weirdly enough, I was the opposite when I played soccer. So I played usually left wing. And I like my only advantage was that I was really quick in the first 10 meters. So I could get around people, I could change directions really well. And then I don't know, I just like I didn't get old, but like I stopped sprinting. So I stopped being fast at that first 10 meters. And I'm like really having to focus on relearning it. My first step is so slow and it's dumb because I'm like, I'm strong. Like my legs are strong. This is not, this doesn't make sense. But it's fun being able to be like, okay, I want to crack this code. I want to figure out how to make those first few steps feel powerful and quick. And just learning the technique that has been great. Jack Edwards gave me a little sprint sesh when I was in Sydney as well. You know him at Metamorphosis Track Project.
Yeah, I do know him. I'm just writing down names to go look at stuff later too, like because it's just good to recap and yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's
One more name to write down before we move on. Sorry.
yeah.
Paul Paul Twyman, if you want anything like gymnasty, calisthenics, he's just a beautiful man. I just love him. He coaches well. He's
What's his
soft spoken.
name?
Paul Twyman.
Oh, pole. See, that's where your accent comes
Sorry,
up.
Paul.
I thought you said
Paul
whole.
Twyman.
I thought you said whole multiple times there. All right,
No,
pole.
no,
Yeah, all right.
Paul Twyman.
Yeah.
Um,
So what do you?
yes.
I'm gonna ask you this because I just competed in Olympic lifting meet
Oh,
2 weeks
sick.
ago.
How'd you go?
It went
Was it good?
well, but I want to see what your projected total is to see if like. I went 115. Um, I actually didn't make my 90, my snatch, because they called me for a press out, which is kind of bullshit. Like it was, I'm taking it as a PR because I also have like some wicked tennis. It's not tennis elbow. It's technically golfer's elbow because it's medial, but I got some wicked Tennessee elbow going on, or medial epicondylitis going on. And I'm counting it because it didn't really look like it, and I made 90, which was my goal. So yeah, I feel good about my clean and jerk was way better than I thought it would be, and I probably could have hit like 120, but I'm happy with the day there. So. Well, yeah. What
Yeah.
are your goals there?
Um, this is funny. So I've got Brandon as my coach, but I also have I call him my sometimes I call him my co-coach. Sometimes I refer to him as the man who has co-custody of my coaching. But he like Christian looks after me when I'm at the gym. So he like does my in-person like movement stuff. Brandon's looking after my programming. He checks in on my movement every week as well. So I've kind of got like two voices in the room. And then obviously I'm in charge because I'm the athlete. But
Yeah.
um I've got one coach who's kind of like, let's have a really nice, friendly 6 for 6 comp. And
Yep.
Brandon's like, no, like you can challenge yourself. You do well under pressure. Like, let's actually push this a little bit harder. And I'm sitting sort of in the middle where I'm like, I want a comfortable first lift that doesn't feel scary because I still get a little bit of fear snatching after I dropped a bar on my head. And I would like just the first lift to be like, I know I'm going to hit that weight any day of the week. Like, doesn't matter how much fear
Yeah.
factor I'm having the day, I'm gonna get it. But I would also love to hit 70 on the platform again, or like I hit 70 on Tuesday this week, and it was fine. Like it was comfortable. It wasn't perfect, but it was a good lift. Like it was all good. And then I deadlifted 72 twice trying to snatch it. You know, you just get there and you're like, nope, that's
Yeah.
not moving.
The the best thing for me on I probably should have opened at like 82 because 82 is like my everyday, and I'm just happy. Like, I mean, Angus is like my first pull is just shit. Like my butt shoots way up, and it's like if I can slow myself down and get better there, like I have some room to grow. But on that day, I just said to myself, like, I'm going to make 85. Like, I'm going to make it. And I made it my first lift. And then I made the jump to 87. And it was just kind of like, I've been a mental midget like most of my life for athletic performances. Like, I play really well. I always played soccer really well against teams that we shouldn't beat. Right. But the teams that we should beat, I didn't have great performances. It wasn't standard, but it was kind of a mental midget game. And I always go back to like my senior year of high school. I played football, American football, and I was like, I was doing pretty well. I was competing with another guy to like start and play receiver. And first play of like me, I run down the field and ball's right here. I can score a touchdown. I just drop it, and for the rest of the season, I couldn't catch shit. So like that there's just trauma there, but it's like that's part of the game is like getting over your demons, and it's like I'm going to make this. Like I think that's what a lot of like lifting is like, if you get to that point, it's like that breaking through a plateau is literally like breaking through a plateau. Like you have to start to get yourself to believe that you can do XYZ. And so I'm like, I'm making 85. And if I wouldn't have made 85, I think the rest of the meet would have went to absolute shit. Like I probably would have like struggled with it a second time. But my clean and jerks felt really good. Like I don't think I had as good of a session cleaning and jerking until that meet. So it's just probably just me, like not actually like I train in my garage alone. So there's not like a whole lot of external stimulus. And like it's when I actually get my head in the game, things go well. So, but
Yeah.
so you want to hit 70 for sure?
I would like to hit 70. That's a we'll see kind of
Yeah.
lift. Like I know I'll hit something like a 64, 65, no worries. And then it starts to get dicier at like 67, 68. Not because the weight is heavy, but just because my brain is like, oh my God, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
And then like 70 is kind of the number that my brain is still working away at the fear. My PB is 73. Like it's still actually under what my PB is, but that was obviously pre-brain bonk. So that
Yeah.
changed things a
It
bit for me.
puts some fear in you. How long ago did you brain bonk?
A year ago yesterday.
Okay. How bad were you concussed?
I was fully healed in January this year.
Okay. So you gave yourself a pretty big dinger. Yeah.
Wasn't
I'm sorry to
fun.
hear.
It's okay. Like I think obviously it has been like a tough thing to deal with and a surprisingly slow road to recovery, but I think I actually learned a lot about myself and my preferences through that and like managing my own energy because I had to in a way that previously I could just be like, I'll use more stimulants and push through. And now I'm much more aware and conscious and careful about where I donate my energy and what I'm willing to deal with in terms of like day-to-day stressors. So I'm like, okay, well, it's a shit way to learn that lesson, but you had to at some point.
I mean, most of my learning to manage that, because especially with like being in business for yourself, like I could literally try to work all the time, and it's a very fast recipe for burning out. And it's like the gym is an analogy for that, right? There's so many ways, but I almost just went and got a coffee before talking to you. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's 5 o'clock now. It's like,
You're
is
like,
it is
I have a bad choice.
I mean, yeah, is it like, can I be okay with it? Probably, but I've also had 2 cups today. Like that third, do I need it? Like, I actually just laid down and like just like meditated for like 15 minutes before we talk. So like, which is a better choice for, in this situation, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so athletically, it sounds like you're living the GPP lifestyle, as Angus would say.
Yeah.
But it's also like your thing, which I think is another big thing that I think people have to discover. And that's one of the things that's me as a coach is like what not everybody, what a lot of people are doing in the coaching spaces, especially people who are really trying to grow their business, is like, well, just use my system. And like what I'm trying to help people understand or do is like there's principles that we can make into your system so it's enjoyable. Like that's my personal philosophy. But like where are you at as a coach with like how you structure things, how you implement things, what you're trying to help people do? And maybe who's your like, I do think it's good to use this like who's your ideal client or somebody that you love working with.
Yeah, I mean, I think the good thing about having had more time in the industry is that I now attract people who want to train like me, or they see my content and they're like, your message resonates with me. Like they want that because they have chosen me because they feel that that's their way. So like I'm often programming for people who fit a smaller number of archetypes than I used to. And I like it that way. Like that's nice. It does mean you end up in more of an echo chamber being like, yeah, my ideas are awesome. But that's also kind of fun, right? Like you're getting people that do want to hear what you have to say. So that's cool. So I think most people that I'm training at the moment are either, I would say they're one of three people. One of them is someone who's an intermediate CrossFitter who's trying to achieve RX skills that they don't currently have. And they're seeing me because they're like, I saw your reel on handstand walk tips and it helped me do this thing. And that made me believe that you're a good coach. So I'm going to come and see you for skill stuff. So that's kind of like archetype one. Archetype two is people who have heard me on podcasts and stuff like that, who are like, you're jaded about CrossFit. I'm jaded about CrossFit. Like, let's do some of the CrossFitty stuff, but not all of the CrossFitty stuff because I feel more broken when I do like CrossFit classes than I want to. And I would like my body to feel better. I would like to do more of the stuff that you include. I want to take it a little bit slower and have some more bodybuilding and structure my weightlifting differently. So that's kind of archetype two. And I'm getting more and more of those people. And that's who, like, I love coaching both the skill people and those people, but those are also the people that I'm like, yeah, we're the same. Like,
Yeah.
I you know,
I'm jaded.
you
I
have,
mean, I think that's probably why I was attracted to your content and just probably your philosophies because like I love CrossFit. I love what it has done for a lot of people. I am jaded on like the mentalities of people. Like it's like taking really cool people and then like putting them into like a box that then like makes them hate each other like or makes them weirdly competitive in like what shouldn't necessarily be a competitive environment. Like you're a
yeah.
30, like I literally talked to a woman like last week. She's like, I'm 45 and I was in like the CrossFit classes and I would be like trying to compete with 30-year-old men. And I'm like, yeah, like that sounds pretty silly. Like,
Yeah. And it's funny, you'll enjoy this. My partner often comes along to our CrossFit gym social events, and people will be like, "Oh, Niv, do you do CrossFit?" And he'll always just look at me and be like, "There's enough type A in this relationship."
yeah,
And people hate hearing it because they
yeah,
don't want to identify with that. And I'm like, "No, we're all here for the same reason. Like, you're running from your demons too."
yeah, 100%. It really
Uh,
is. It's demon running, right? So
yeah.
yeah, funny.
But it
I love
it does. without, painting too broad a brush. Like there are specific personality types that tend toward enjoying CrossFit and stay in that environment,
Yeah.
and sometimes that's a really excellent thing because it's pulling people to exercise in a way that they might not otherwise. And sometimes it's like, yeah, this is also feeding some of the parts of you that might not be beneficial to dial up for your own mental
Yeah.
health.
Yeah. 100%. Okay. I love that. So type 2 is the jaded
The
CrossFitter.
jaded CrossFitter, jaded ex CrossFitter.
Yeah.
Um,
Who's 3? Do you have one more?
I did when I said it, and I don't know where it's gone.
That's all right.
uh, But yeah, I mean, I think if it's two main people, it's probably that. And I guess maybe type 3 would just be someone who's in between, who's kind of like, I want a holistic program, or perhaps like I've got increasingly hybrid or high rocks people who are like, I
Yeah.
want to do this training, but I also want some stuff on the side. So can you give me some extra gymnastics, some extra weightlifting, or some extra like, just strengthy stuff to support my other, like, ultra endurance running or something like that. And then it becomes a question of managing, obviously load management, of being like, cool, how many kilometers did you run this week? How much load can we theoretically like actually put through your legs? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, it
Yeah.
was a big running week. Let's pare it back to this many sets of squats and lunges and shit like that.
Yeah.
Because I think this is the game, right? Where I'm like, I think that good training components, as I said, some move fast, some move slow, some cardio stuff, some gymnasty stuff. But like you're gonna have to dial those pieces up and down substantially for people's goals. And if you've got someone who is running heaps because they want to do ultras, you're gonna have to dial down a lot the move fast, dial down a lot the gymnastics, because you're like, well, I have to make energy and space and time for you to recover for this.
100%. And I think that's the hard thing for people. Like that is kind of one of the big things. It's like I hired you so that I could do everything I want to do. And it's like, well, I'm not a magician, right? Like you still have a certain amount of capacity that we can dose up over time like, but you can't like the result. And like I do think there's a mental and an enjoyment capacity like component of stuff like this. Like if you are having fun, it is easier to go do more, right? But that also there is an upper limit to that. Like even when you're having a ton of fun, like you still have thresholds that like you are going to hit that are going to start to tell you like, all right, let's take a step back, right? But um just because like you want to do a lot more doesn't necessarily mean like that's the best move. And like that's probably what I've grown into and gotten better at as a coach is like, well, the results that we are getting right now do not indicate that like you can keep going the way you want per se. Like if this is what you want, we can't necessarily do that. Doesn't mean that we can't keep doing stuff. We just have to scale back. Right? And that's a hard conversation and people don't like it, but if
No,
they
they
get it,
don't.
if it helps, it helps, right?
Yeah. And this is where the like balance of GPP, general physical preparation, versus specific SPP preparation, like, people want to spend their lives doing SPP if they're competitive in a sport, but enough GPP will actually give them the base strength, the overall capacity, and like the joint health and movement variability that will allow them to do the SPP. So we've had like this kind of, Angus alone, we could say, has driven a particular increase in the GPP interest, which is fantastic. And I think sometimes people think that means you can only do GPP and you should never kind of dial up one component of your program. And it's like, well, no, that's not what he's saying. I don't believe, knowing him. And B, we should be able to move the needle toward SPP seasonally when we need to, or even year round, as long as we have some of these base components of good training in the program all the time. So it's just the knowledge of how to dial up and dial down those components of training is like, that's the secret sauce. That's what good coaches are doing now that probably wasn't as obvious, 10 years ago when the world was more about bodybuilding and powerlifting.
100%. The genius of Angus is that he just called his program GPP, General Physical Preparation. Like
Yeah.
that, honestly, when I'm like, oh shit, like he just called it what it is, and now
Yeah.
people are buying into it. Like
Yeah.
he didn't like there's a powerful like marketing is very powerful. We know this, right? Like CrossFit was a great melding of like just fitness and cross training like
Mm.
and like what that could mean a lot of people didn't know in the beginning, but it got a lot of people on board with like not just being a bodybuilder and not just being a runner, right? And like it was still general physical preparation. And like the genius of Angus's Train Heroic community, we like this is gonna start like a like we should just start. I always think about just starting like just beef with Angus just to have like beef going on because that's what grows accounts. It's just drama. Like I'll just be your arch nemesis. But the genius of just like it is like it's just good training. Like and like I can stand by like what I'm trying to do for somebody. Like I coach a lot of people who are like power lifters that still want to do other stuff, and it's just because like I understand how to like manage fatigue, and also like because a lot of them come from just doing so much volume that they just feel like shit, and we pull back the volume and we just strategically work their weekly cycle. And then if they have competitions, it's just like, well, we just build a little bit of a base and then we peak it out. Like it's like that can look a lot of different ways, but
Yeah.
the genius of GPP or general is like this is what it is. Like this is what you're getting. You're doing the general work so that you can go run 5Ks, right? Or do a little bit more playing of your sport.
Yeah.
Whereas everybody else tried to brand it like their own thing. He just called it what it is, and now it's like his, like, and which is genius, right? So anyway,
I think like that's so funny, right? Like in a fitness world where everyone wants to, I don't know, turn it into a tribe, right? They're like, I'm a hybrid athlete because I do endurance and I lift weights. And we're like, there's people that are like, yeah, but that's also just like training.
it's just
And
yeah,
you've
100%.
got CrossFit, you've got High Rocks, you've got hybrid athlete, you've got all of these things that you can hashtag because you have to be able to hashtag something. And Angus was just like, I'm taking the literal term, and I'm making that my brand. And hilariously, he still created a tribe out of it. I'm like,
100%.
you did this to push back on the tribalism and then built a tribe. That's even funnier. That's so meta. Like,
Yeah, I mean it kind of makes sense for that guy. I mean, which it's
it's yeah. If
that
anyone's gonna
his
Angus, right?
mentorship was also just really good for just be your authentic self. Like figure
Yeah.
out who your authentic self is and start showing up like that, and your business will probably grow, right? Which is hard for us to do. But
Yeah.
I got actually a client coming in like a few minutes. So my last couple questions are like what are the big pitfalls? Okay, like I mean, do you use your own experience to help people navigate pitfalls like that they have? I mean, it's kind of you have to, right? But like, what are the pitfalls that people like have that you notice right away because you went through it? Or what are the big things that like problems that you see arise for people?
Under eating.
Yes.
Like, especially in the CrossFit space. And more so for women than for men, but it absolutely still happens to both. Is just because people are like, well, being leaner makes me lighter, and gymnastics is easier when I'm lighter. They undereat, but I want to keep my six pack because I'm an athlete, and they undereat. And I, as I said, like years and years of disordered eating and underfueling, and symptoms of low energy availability. I'm like, I understand where your headspace is at. And I also understand exactly why that's going to be the thing that fucks you over in the future. So let's get that sorted now. That's like a really, really, really big one that is easy for me to pull on personal experience and be like, let me chat you through what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I I like I'm gonna talk to you about nutrition like after this because I might be like I kind of need I need some accountability and I need some guidance. So we can talk about that later. Because you do little pitch people, Anna does nutritional coaching, correct?
I
Within
do.
your scope, which I do love that you put like you have a scope of practice because a lot of people just be like, I'm a nutritional coach and I can help everybody. And it's like, oh no, like that's not
Yeah.
the best way. And
Yeah.
you don't want to do like I don't want to help everybody anymore. That's kind of a maturing in business type of thing is realizing like having a scope and finding clients that really fit you is really good for your business, right?
Yeah.
All right, so moonshot activity that you want to do someday. Like I kind of made it a goal recently that I want to do a 500-pound deadlift and under 5 minute mile, like 500 and a 5 minute mile conjoined in the next couple years.
Mm.
Which at my current body weight and my current deadlifting capacity, I think my best pull is like 480, so I still need to like actually up my deadlift a little bit, and my best mile right now is like 615. So I got some ways to go. But like, do you have a goal like that?
Mm, I don't at the moment, but I do think that a cool thing to do would be to just compete in as many different things as possible one year. Do a weightlifting comp, do a CrossFit comp, do a sprinting comp, do like I would just love to be like, yeah, I did 5 comps in 5 sports this year, or like something crazy like that, where it's just like,
Yeah.
show me what
Yeah.
I'm bad at, you know?
Yeah. I'm playing
Gotta come.
soccer this Sunday. I'm stoked. Like, do you play rec soccer at all?
No, I haven't tried to look for it yet. I don't have the time at the moment, or maybe it's energy management or time management. I don't know. It's both. But I would love to go back to some team sport just socially
It is
soon.
fun. It's nice to be able to play. Like, it actually kind of makes my week a little bit better because I do kind of get I rabbit hole myself. I'm an extroverted introvert, I think is probably a good way to put it. But being on a team again is fun. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, I like that. I like the 5 sports or 5 things. Um, yeah, it's just it's you one of your posts that you tagged or you pinned is like, boring, like how to not have boring, or like what to do if you get bored easily. Like, and I'm like,
Yes.
yeah, this is me. This is who I am. So, which is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Um,
Before we wrap, can I drop one more name on you?
yeah, and drop pitch yourself too. So drop names and then pitch yourself, please.
Okay, last name is Zach, Z-A-C. I just had to think to say Z, not Z. Zach Kongonis,
Okay.
Kongonis. He's probably the other person who's influenced my training philosophy the most over the past 6 months. He's also a friend of mine, so I'm biased, but
Yeah,
he helped me go from like, here's my kind of like bubble of gymnastics understanding to being able to be like, here are the components of it. They fit in these buckets. This is how I program it. Goodbye.
yeah. I think that's one of the things I'm working on is like being able to systematize your thinking so that you can explain it to people simply. Um,
Yeah.
and
He is gun at that. He is so good at that
yeah,
exact. It's freaky how good he is at
how do
that.
you say his last name or how do you spell his last name?
Kongonis,
Oh, okay,
Kong.
yeah, yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
I found
Kong
him.
and then bonus. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. I added him. So dope. No, I'm gonna wrap this up. It's where people find you.
I'm very active on Instagram at Anna Wish, like wish on a star, fitness, Anna Wish Fitness. I'm occasionally on TikTok when I remember to post there at Anna, nope, I'm at Coach Anna Wish. That tells you how often I'm using it. And I'm pathetically on YouTube, but very rarely. So I put most of my eggs into the Instagram basket.
I'm working on YouTube. I'm just starting like with really like not very good, which is I'm low production value, and I do enjoy it. I do enjoy like trying to like talk for 4 to 5 minutes and like making it a little bit better. So, and if it is like where most people really do hinder themselves is they just they won't allow themselves to like do, and like, and I don't know what you're like, but like if your perfectionistic tendencies ramp up when you're trying to create, like you gotta like you gotta tone those down a little bit and just get better by doing, right? Like that's kind of my biggest mantra. So no, hey,
You're right.
I'm gonna hit stop recording, but thanks for being there. I want to chat with you really quick when we're done. All right, so I'm gonna stop, but thanks so much for being on. It was awesome.
Thank you.
All right.